Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to another great episode of What's Up with Power. My name is Justin Wagner. I'll be the host and the presenter today as we talk about how to interpret your power data. If you haven't done so already, hop in the group ride on WUWP. You can see here to the side, we're just about to get started, and we're going to get that ride to kick off. We'll get the group rolling at about 1.5 to 1.8 watts per kilo. And we'll get that rolling as we then switch to the teaching portion, where today we're going to talk about some topics based on Chapter 6 of Training and Racing with Power Meter. Give me a second. Type in some messages. Okay. Take down my power. A little too much there. Okay, looks like we got the group going. And I'm going to switch over here to our showing the slides. So, okay, today we're going to be talking about interpreting the data based on Chapter 6 of Training and Racing with a Power Meter. That's a book by Hunter Allen and Andrew Coggin. Some great concepts on training with power from there. If you don't have that book, I highly recommend you get it. It's really going to help you take home and study some of these concepts we talk about on the show and help you take to the next level. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to be talking about some of the charts we can use. Jamel, you're feeding back just a little bit, by the way. So we're going to be talking about distribution charts, how to interpret them, power and cadence charts. We're going to talk about the critical power chart, and we're going to be talking about a cross-workout, cross-race analysis. And so these are kind of some of the analysis concepts we want to cover today. So we'll just kind of go along with them. So first off, we're going to talk about a power distribution chart. And we're going to talk about maybe what the purpose of that distribution chart is and how you can use it in your analysis. So here the question is, did I hit the zones I was targeting for a workout? So let's say you've got a workout here that's 3 by 20 minutes in SST, or sweet spot training, which is, in this case, is prescribed to be 92% of FTP. You can see here on the screen. So basically afterwards we can use the distribution chart to determine how much time you actually spent in those zones and figure out excuse me, and figure out if you did the workout to the way you want it or not. So this is what this power distribution chart looks like. I've got this set up on 10 watt bins, and you can notice something very interesting. You should get you see a big spike here around the prescribed power, and then here we have a spike around the resting power, the warm-up or resting interval. You'll notice that this workout was not done in what's called erg mode. Erg mode will basically force you to be in a very tight power window. And so this, you can tell there's a bit of variance in the power. That's fine. Let's actually take it a step further. So we can kind of add up these bars. Let's switch it to 30 watt bins, since the 30 watts is a pretty good range around this specific zone. You'll see that we've got, person has, let's count the 3 bins nearby, 11 minutes plus 30 plus another 16, so 48, 46, 57 minutes in these 3 bars, so pretty close. So I bet you if you add up these spikes over here, you'll get that remaining 3 minutes. Maybe he surged in those workouts, but here you can kind of tell, okay, yeah, I hit it. That's one way you can look at power distribution charts. And specifically, when you look here at these finer grained ones, it's really easy to tell how much time you were spending in different zones. And we'll talk about, or we'll show what this may look like for an outdoor ride as compared to an indoor ride with a very structured training plan, because they will look pretty different. Okay, so cadence chart. Now you'll notice here that cadence in this case was pretty much held in the same zone. There's not a big bimodal cadence chart because this workout was not specifically focused on changing your cadence around. So you can kind of just see where this person's natural cadence lies. I don't have the units down here, but this is probably going to be somewhere around 85, 95 RPM is probably where that bump is. And so if you were, there's a lot of workouts that will actually prescribe really low cadence on the trainer. And then you'll start to see two bumps in this graph on those workouts, and you'll see how much time you've spent in the different cadence zones. Not cadence zones, but the different cadences. I guess you could break them down into zones, but I think you're getting what I'm talking about. Okay, so now let's look at these, the power distribution chart on the left, cadence distribution chart on the right for an outdoor race example. And this is actually for a little over a 9-hour long outdoor race. So it was a very long endurance, well, very long race. It's 200 miles long. And what you see here, you notice these big spikes beginning. Well, actually in a race, this is a good thing. If you have a big power spike here at 0 and you just have one big push at the end and you win, well, that's kind of ideal, right? But this isn't necessarily what you want in a structured workout. You don't want to be spending your time freewheeling because you're wasting time on the trainer. Time you could be spent doing other things. So this is just a good example. You see here, same thing applies with cadence. Sitting in the draft, downhill, whatever. There's quite a bit of time here. In fact, of all these power bins, the most time was spent coasting. So, not putting power on the pedals. That's interesting. It's also good, you want to see that. We also see there's a really long tail up here because there were some really hard efforts in that race. In the end, that's what's going to make a race, is whether or not you're able to stay in the draft during these hard efforts. But interesting. And you'll notice here a lot more variance in the cadence in this part, just because terrain outdoors is going to make an impact on what cadences you can hold based on the gearing on your bike. So, give me a second to catch the grip here a little bit. So, here we go. Let's put them side by side. Power on the left, cadence on the right. Now, I will note that horizontal scales are different here. So, this peak on the far right of power is not the same wattage number as this one. This one should probably be shifted quite a bit to the left. But if you were trying to line up the horizontal scales between these two. But point being here, it's a whole different game because you're trying different things. You're trying to hit the target wattage. Here you're trying to just stay in the group with as little as power possible. And there's actually not quite as bit of difference in the cadence chart, but you do see, like I said, a lot more freewheeling in an outdoor race. So there you go. That's power and cadence distribution charts, and kind of some of the key elements you can pick out from them, or things we can understand about the difference between racing and specific trainers, or excuse me, racing and structured workouts. Okay, so next thing we want to talk about is the critical power chart. So what is the critical power chart going to answer for us? There's some questions here. How much power could I hold for 6 minutes? How much power could I hold for 10 minutes? 18 minutes? And so when you're trying to figure out what your perfect maximal pacing for, say, a time trial of a certain time duration, your critical power chart is going to be your friend. That's what you're going to refer to figure out what you should hold, what you should be aiming for. So what do I mean by that? So let's go one more step to this graph. So this is what a critical power chart looks like. This critical power chart shows you on the vertical axis, this is average power for duration in watts, and then the horizontal axis is the duration in time. So if we follow this blue line up from 10 minutes and go to where it intersects the graph and follow it to the left, you can see this person's power curve. They can hold approximately 330 watts for 10 minutes. And as you would expect, as the time duration goes up, those watts go down. And as the time duration gets shorter, the watts go up. This makes complete sense. It's something we all know, that the longer an effort is, the less hard you could go for the duration of that effort. So, one thing I do want to mention, if you guys have any questions during the presentation, you can let them fly in the Facebook comments. We will have a question and answer session afterwards where we'll discuss those and we go back in detail. So I forgot to mention that at the beginning. Anyway, so here you go. Here's the chart. So what does this mean? Okay, so if I've got a time trial and I know that if my goal time is 10 minutes, we'll talk about how you maybe get to that goal time, and you'll know, okay, if I try to pace myself at 350 watts, I've never performed that well. So it would be unrealistic for me to pace myself at 350 watts for 10 minutes because I've never done that before. And maybe you have a breakout performance, and maybe you do that, but depending on how long you've been tracking your power meter data, you'll have a good idea for how realistic it is to even hit these maximums. You may need to shoot for 95% of your overall best performance, play it on the safe side, so then you can push towards the end. There's all sorts of strategy here. Well, let's talk about how do we get the time duration. So most, obviously, time trials, most are based on distance, right? We've got 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers, 40 kilometers, 10 miles. Fastest guy across the course wins. Now there is a time trial that's based on time, the hour record. That's a bit of a different beast, but and so in that case it's a direct translation. But what we do for ones that are based on distance, you can compare maybe you go look at the Strava segment, figure out who people you've competed with or people you expect to be close to, and have a general feel for how fast the time is going to be. That will get you in the ballpark for your cadence, your power pacing. So one other thing I kind of want to mention on time trial pacing is you'll notice that a lot of high-level professionals, including Kristen Armstrong, 3-time gold medalist, actually doesn't use a power meter while she's racing. Really, she doesn't look at the data. And her reasoning for that is, well, either I've got it in me or I don't, and I don't want technology telling me to slow down. Valid point. She's obviously raced a lot of time trials, though. She's got a really good gut feel for it. So if nothing else, the power meter is a great way to, as you start doing your time trials, to figure out what that pacing looks like and train yourself so that later on you're able to do what she does. And also on certain courses, time trial is about keeping up speed. And holding a constant power may not be the best for speed. You may want to drop your power on the downhills. You may want to surge a bit on the uphills. So just a couple things to think about if you're going to be using this for pacing a time trial. All right, so next thing we want to talk about is something I call cross workout or race analysis. So this is kind of a fun little analysis a lot of people do actually as you perform on, let's say, a Strava segment. You want to know how you're performing better over time, and especially with Strava segments infused with your power data, they can help tell the full story or a much better story about maybe why you perform better. And obviously uphill segments are going to be much better for comparing the power, because things like wind, drafting can be huge changes in your speed for a flat segment. So you maybe have a lot faster times where you actually put out less power, maybe in a big drafting pack. So let's Here we go. We're going to talk about this specific climb that I've done several times near my house here. Bella to Bella Vista climb, 1.4 miles, 7% average gradient. Okay, so we're going up 560 feet. So what we notice here, and what's interesting, we're going to focus on 3 separate times here. We're going to talk about the top one here, the time in 7:41, average watts 413. Another time, it was about less than a year earlier, 340 watts, time 8:42. Now here's the interesting one, way down on the chart, 352 watts and 11:33. So first thing we notice here is having this power data in here illuminates something for us. We say, whoa, 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 what happened? Either Justin was really, really fat when he did this performance down here compared to these ones up here, or there's something else going on, and we can dig into what that is. So here's what's interesting is we go ahead and pick up the comparison between the efforts. So the colors match here. We have blue, black is the fastest, pink, then green. And the thing you want to notice here is at this point, apparently on that performance, I gave up and lost several minutes. I must have been soft pedaling or something here, or waiting for someone. But so this is interesting, is that if you just look at average power back here, you would think, man, you did great. But apparently the average power didn't drop significantly on this easier section back here where I really let off the gas, or maybe I just stopped, who knows. Although I think also the other things, there are some bike differences between this March and August performance. May have been some weight differences, but you can see this is a very illuminating picture. We start to think about, you would expect uphill always more watts is faster time, but this one down here shows us how pacing and carrying momentum can be very big. Because we still spent quite a bit of energy in this blue one, but we got a pretty poor time because we made a very poor pacing decision. Probably wasn't actually going for personal best here. But if we were, and we made that decision to slow down, you can see at that point in the course, put down less power, you slow down drastically. So this kind of goes to understanding carrying your momentum, and why just looking at power for time trials or hill climbs is not the full story. It is a lot of the story, obviously, but you can still really mess it up or do a lot better with pacing. But conversely, maybe put out the same 413 watts, maybe you drop a faster time if you plan this wattage more appropriately. So maybe you lay down more power on the steeper ones and back off a bit on as it flattens out. That'll help you keep your momentum over the top of those short kickers and not increase your average power too much. So that's what I kind of call this cross workout race analysis. They've got in WKO4 they call this multi-file range analysis, and I actually like applying it to an actual segment in real life. I think it's a pretty interesting thing to compare over time as you're progressing. So what have we, a couple topics in the chapter 6 we didn't cover. Specifically, there's some talk around quantification of a match, what constitutes a match in the term of a race, when you've burnt a match, haven't burnt a match, and also it talks a little bit about different shapes of an interval. So let's say you've got that 3x20 SST workout we talked about. It'll talk about, as you interpret how your performance along those interval sections and what those shapes look like, help you interpret what your performance is. Or maybe it's good for a coach who's looking at other people's power files. You can get an idea for, okay, they started out really well conservatively and they built up, or they went way too hard in the beginning, overshot, and that caused them to drop off. So these are kind of some of the simpler analysis they talk about in the book. So I'd recommend, if you want to get into more depth on those, grab the book, Training and Racing with Power Meter. It's not expensive. I don't make any money if you buy it. It's like $15 on Amazon. good stuff and a wealth of information. If you're learning how to use a power meter, that's kind of the de facto standard, and about 99% of websites that do power performance analysis are all based on the concepts introduced in this book. So with that, we're going to move on to the question and answer section. So if you've got any questions, go ahead, let them fly in the comments. I'm going to grab a drink of water real quick because I've been talking a lot. Had a great group going on here in Zwift. You also notice, as of last week, I'm going to actually have my sling on today. Hopefully my doctor's not watching, although I do have a x-ray today. So for those of you who don't know, about 5.5 weeks ago I broke my clavicle. So I've been recovering on the indoor trainer for quite some time and getting better to the point where I can use it quite a bit, but it's definitely not fully healed. So, okay, well, it looks like we don't have any questions in the feed. That's fine. The recording will definitely be made available afterwards. I'll still be here in the group ride for the remaining 9 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and bring down the live feed. I want to thank everyone for coming out. Thank our sponsor, Training Peaks. They've extended a gracious offer to viewers of the show to get a discount on their Training Peaks premium services. So they offered 20% off for viewers of the show. And to get that discount, when you go to checkout for your Training Peaks premium, enter in the code ODZ20 or ODZ20, and you'll get 20% off your services. So we really appreciate their support of the show. They put out a lot of great content, great analysis. They help a lot of coaches spread this information on training with power and all sorts of endurance related stuff. So great partner to have. Looks like we do have one comment here from Nadia. Thank you, Nadia. Thanks for the info as usual. Glad to have you. Thank you for showing up. So without any further ado, I will sign off here on the live stream. Thank you once again for coming. We will see you next week, and we hope you have enjoyed.